And the policy is commission can't respond, there's not a dialogue back and forth, so you can come and, let off some steam and focus on an issue, but, there's so much that goes on in that city, and so much information that, even for those of us that spend full time at it, there's more information sometimes than we totally absorb. So it's harder for our citizens to understand everything that goes into some decision. Obviously, for a number of people, a lot of things, it seems to be general America, and feeling that the city's heading in the wrong direction, they're elected folks don't listen to the citizens, staff doesn't listen, and it's not true that we don't listen, it's that, and it's not certainly not because we're getting smarter than this one time of you, the five of us, are regular citizens of the city, that's just like everybody else. We got elected, Lord knows why we chose to run, but here we are. And so, every decision we make affects us, it affects you. We just have a lot of information, a lot more information. And so we'll talk about whatever we do now tonight. There's a couple of things I need your help with, but this will be a little different than any of the town halls I've done, or because there were specific issues, whether it's the referendums or whatever. And we'll talk about anything you want to talk about. I don't have an agenda per se, except to make myself available, and I'll do it if people want to. At the end of this meeting, I'll ask you if this was worth your time. If it is, I'll do it every month, and we can talk about whatever's going on. Plus, there's going to be stuff we're never going to agree on. There's going to be some stuff that people understand but don't like. There might even be some people who say, gee, sort of, I get that. But we're not going to resolve anything. We're not going to all of a sudden solve all the problems of the city. But I think it's important that people do all of that and ourselves can feel more than just in our meetings about and sit face to face and talk about what's on your mind and what's on your because maybe building trust is more about that than doing what people want you to do. And that's the one thing I need help with. The struggle I have is I want to be able to build trust in the city. I want you to all have more confidence in what we do. Even if you don't like the decisions we make. I struggle with is trust building based on doing what people tell us they want us to do, or is it built on something else? Because it's purely dependent on doing what people want us to do, or what they want us to do. We can't satisfy everything, and every decision. There's lots of people that don't like the decisions we make. Maybe because they're wrong decisions, but maybe because there's a lot of information they don't know. So I struggle with that because I don't want to not be able to earn trust. But if it's dependent on me doing exactly what people are saying they want us to do, regardless of what the facts may say, or what might be in the best interest of the whole city, and not maybe them individually or in maybe their area, then it's a struggle. And the commission side, our side, we struggle. And it's frustrating because we sense the public's frustration about a lot of the things that are happening in the city. So, well, let's just open it. You raised your hand, ma'am. Let's.
Yeah, I do. I have never met you before. So could you please introduce yourself and give me a little of your government background?
My name's Phil Stokes. I spent my entire career as a financial guy, a financial background, I'm an accountant by education. I spent half my career buying and selling companies for small family-owned business, and traveled around the country. Welcome. And I spent the second half owning a handful of small businesses, a couple of small niche newspapers for the homeowners, for arts and entertainment places to go, things to do. I had a residential security business. And then I retired about a dozen years back and ended up here in Southwest Florida and had no real interest in politics, getting involved, but I was paying attention to what was going on in the city. didn't particularly love all the decisions that were being made, and felt that maybe I could, at least engage in some respect. So I got on one of the advisory boards, tax oversight advisory board. And then one of the commissioners who were terming out, I ran into and asked very innocently who was running for her position. She said, no, and would you be interested? And I said, are you kidding me? And one thing led to another. We had conversations. Eventually, she convinced me that she thought I had the skill set, the education, the occupational background to, bring a perspective and some, capability to the commission. And so I ran. I mean, nobody really knew me. I live up in the Welland Park area. That's where I lived. I didn't even know what Welland Park or West Villages was when we moved here, but, I found out shortly thereafter. But it's a big city, and I tried to get known as best I could, and I managed to get myself elected. And I do love the city. I do love the people here, and it's a city in transition. It is a sleepy bedroom community, residential bedroom community. It's all of a sudden finding out it's a bigger city than it thought it was, and it's going through lots of growing pains.
For me, the city lost trust when they did the ELC and they did not send out notifications to people. I know it wasn't illegal, but not sending out notifications to the people about the rezoning, I think was a huge thing for me. Because I know it wasn't illegal, but I think ethically, it should have been done. And so I know that you all have talked about, you couldn't believe that the transfer station didn't get approved for the grants. For me, it was because I didn't see it like a huge, well thought out information on it. And at the meetings, whenever you guys talked about it, it seemed a little fuzzy. And then I was thinking, if they're bringing all this money in from having the transfer station, then how come we would have to pay a grant for a long time? So that is why I didn't vote for it. I think it's a great idea. I think it's worth pursuing. But for me, the trust came from not notifying the homeowners and the empty lot people. So I know that was a question you guys had. So that's just my perspective.
And, it's funny. When I look at how the city has increased its communications capabilities in the 3 years I've been involved, in a couple of years prior to when I was paying attention, I see dramatic improvement. Do I see all the problems of communication solved? Not in the least. In fact, the efforts made to communicate better opened up even more of an awareness as to how much more could be done. In hindsight, it would have been worth $250,000 of taxpayer money to send those letters.
They had no problem sending notices out after that.
Yeah. It's sometimes I think that government looks at things and says, we get leadership, electeds get elected to represent everybody. Staff's job is to run the day-to-day of the city. And I think sometimes there is that insensitivity to those people who want to know more. You all represent people who care. And whether you agree with me, whether you like me or not, I respect you because you care. You're here tonight on a Monday night at 6 o'clock. You'd rather be home doing whatever. You're here. There's 90,000 plus that aren't. And it's easy for government, it's easy for staff to adopt a mindset that we're hired or elected to run the city on your behalf and do the best we can. And we go about doing that because there's so much going on every single day that the ability to communicate everything that's going on is virtually impossible. But when people want to know, when issues affect a lot of people, there needs to be a greater sensitivity. And you can't deny it. You can try to rationalize it and say, oh, it's a small group of people. It isn't a small group of people. A lot of people want to know what's going on. And there's nothing wrong with going out of your way to make everybody aware.
Well, that was such a huge one. I mean, that was massive. So I think that the city does do a good job with communication for those that are seeking it. Because I go to some of the meetings virtually, I listen and all that stuff. I wish there was a way to ask questions in the middle of meetings, but as I understand, I'm not there. But for that huge of a thing, that really needed to be, I talked to so many people, had no clue that was going on. And I bet a lot of people that have those properties, either at those places or, around them, have no clue.
And I think it was maybe nearsighted of the city not to think that, for all the years that the conversations over redoing the ULDC took place. I mean, about every 5 years, it ought to be tightened up and cleaned up and reconciled with the comp plan. But, 10 years, commissions and staff talked about all this stuff. And so it was always on their plate. And then for 2 years since I got on, I mean, staff worked to a disproportionate amount of time on this redo. Well, while it was certainly in staff's face and commission's face, it was not necessarily in the face of all the citizens who are out there. So could we have done more? Should we have done more? In hindsight, I can just say no to that. You're right.
Well, and I know the city commissioner said, well, we did this communication and this communication, but a lot of people aren't looking or seeing those. And they kind of figure you guys are running things fine, no big deal. But that to me was a huge one.
Yeah, and we said it a lot of times, and I'll say it again, that the ULDC is a living document. It's you don't want to be changing it every couple of months, but there are things already that it was thousands of pages. Now it's less than that, but
It was the rezoning piece.
Yep, and that's a tough issue for people. I mean, in the city, let's face it, even if the city had sent letters to everybody, even if the communication had been twice what it was, I don't know that it would have changed people's perception as to how they were affected by it. Some weren't affected at all. Some were very affected by it. And, this city can't stop growing. That we can't stop people from coming here. And I know you've heard, anybody who's listened heard me say this before, and probably other commissioners and other members of staff. This was platted out for single-family quarter-acre lots, 250,000 properties. Every single-family quarter-acre lot that generates $1 of revenue costs us more than that dollar to provide basic services. And so if we don't want to be a Fort Myers from a standpoint of millage rate, which is almost three times what we're paying, prior commissions, existing commissions thought the city needs to balance itself a little better. It needs to desperately develop commercially. In some way, shape, or form, less than 10% commercial revenue is not going to cut it. It's going to cost us a fortune to live here as residents. It just is. The facts are the facts. So how do you do that? You got to go in and rezone. You got to take the areas that are least developed and the areas that are arterial roads that are most traveled. Those are the areas where the city develops, yet people living everywhere. And, I'm living on Price Boulevard, and look at what you're doing to me. First, you're taking half my front lawn. Now you're going to mixed zone it so that anything can go here. And how do you tell somebody, well, gee, sorry, take it on the chin, for the city?
Can I comment on that?
Yeah.
Not to interrupt, but on the same line as you're saying, notification. So if a developer has to notify the residents within a certain amount of distance where that development is going to go in, then the city can do the same.
Yep.
Right? So you just said, how can we, as a city, be more respectful to the citizenry? So that's one thing that you can do as a city, is notify the residents within a certain distance of where one of the city's projects are going in, or a new development is going in, just like the developer notifies. The city should do the same. It's respecting the citizenry and making sure that they have a voice of what is going on in their city. And in this commission's eyes, it appears to the citizenry that it doesn't matter what we say and how we vocalize our objections to some of the projects or whatever that come before the commission. It doesn't matter what we say. It's ignored. And you just go ahead and vote against it anyway. And that's the perception. If we had our voices heard and said, you know what, we heard you, this is what we're going to do. We're going to compromise and we're going to do an extra, we're going to go the extra mile and do this. That would make a heck of a difference in changing the perspective of the citizenry and their perception of the commission and the staff and the city manager not giving a crap about what the citizens say, basically.
And, you know,
But first I have to commend you for being here and holding this meeting. Because I don't see anybody else here but you, and you're always really good at that.
sunshine obviously prohibits like the other commissioners from being here, because I had a couple who said, you know, can I go?
But you're always reaching out to the citizenry, it's appreciated.
I try, you know, to try to break down what you said, Rob, you know, maybe right before you walked in, I said it. In hindsight, when it came to ULDC rewrite, it would have been worth $250,000 to send out letters to everybody in the city.
Everybody, not just.
It would have been worth it, in my estimation. We would have taken some heat for spending that kind of money to do a mailing.
Right.
But, and even then, you wouldn't believe how many people own property in the city that we don't even know where the heck some of them are and how to reach some of them and communicate. Yeah, right. So, yeah, I never got that, but still, you make the effort.
Right.
And, you know, when it comes to the other part of what you said, it pains me to think that people think we don't think about how these decisions affect people.
I know you do, but the perception with the citizenry is that you don't.
And there's so many decisions that we don't have a say because of the rights people have to their properties. Now, you can argue, well, you're rezoned, so you created an environment that's going to be much more conducive to development. Hopefully, the right type of development, the commercial development, the non-residential development, the mixed-use residential, the opportunity to have more affordable type of housing types out there. But if you're living in a single-family neighborhood and all of a sudden a block and a half away, there's going to be, you know, a set of condos.
Is that your business plan? I'm sorry, I'd like to know what the city's business plan is. It seems like you're pandering to small businesses to bring them in here and then have them bring their employees here from elsewhere, and for the citizens to pay for affordable housing for the people that come in to work in these businesses. Now, the multifamily zoning that is being crammed into the city, and the amount of people that the city manager, and I don't know if you all are on the same page, want to put in the city, it's ridiculous. You'll never be able to get out of here if there's a hurricane. As far as businesses, you can't put any large businesses where you guys have the high density commercial, because there's no way to get any product out of this area. You've got one road. Have you been up I-75 lately? Try to get to Sarasota. It takes you 2 hours to get to Sarasota and 3 hours to get to Tampa. And there's no rail service. You've got a small airport here. There's no way any large corporation that made anything other than maybe, I don't know, widgets or whatever, would want to locate here.
See, and actually, there are certain dynamics that attract bigger businesses who would employ people in our city at good wages. One is population, okay? That's first and foremost. And as we break the 100,000 citizen barrier, we have all kinds of focus on the city of Northport for growth, non-residential growth, commercial growth. You asked what the vision plan is. The vision plan is to take a city that right now has 8 to 9% of its revenue come from non-residential, non-property tax related revenues. It's horrendous. It's unsustainable. And so consequently, the goal of the city has been to raise that revenue source, that commercial revenue source, to 20 to 30%.
I understood the aim of the city, and it really shocked me to see that Barbara Langdon got voted down on a couple of issues, and I want to thank you guys for that. But certain people want to turn us into Cape Coral, which now is having problems with water, problems with sewer, problems with the land is actually sinking because they're pumping all the water out. Now they want to build a new bridge to Fort Myers because their old bridge can't handle it. They have more vacant property there. I think it's the highest vacant property in the state is in Cape Coral right now. Unfinished buildings, empty homes. We went through that in 2008 when every other street corner had an unfinished home.
Yeah.
Now we're going through every other street corner, it's got a multifamily apartment. And you're telling us we need a big police station because we don't have enough room for all the people that are going to be here in these apartments that we're building so people can come here and work in the jobs that we're providing for them through tax breaks and loans and things to businesses.
Well, we don't actually give tax breaks to those people, okay?
Incentives, all right, I don't.
We don't even give significant incentives to anybody to bring business in, okay? I'll use Dwelling Park as an example, okay? Developer owned all that property, owned it. City didn't own it. People that owned it, company that owned it, has property rights to develop it. And we said, we don't have the infrastructure capacity. City can't build your water plant, your drinking water plant, your reclaimed water plant, a safety building, the house police and fire, roads. City can't fund that. Northport citizens are not going to pay for that. And so the developer spent $100 million, maybe more, to do all that. It didn't give, it transferred ownership of those water facilities, the water plants, and the safety building to the city of Northport. And the impact fees that are generated from Welland Park builders and developers are being used to pay back some. It'll be 50 years if they ever see all their money back. But they're making money plenty other ways, okay? So it's not exactly anybody has a, I'm not too worried about the developers there. But that development grew on the backs of development investment. Just like out in Activity Center 6 and 10, the future of that commercial and light industrial area will be on the backs of developers because the city doesn't have that money. If we all put every dime we all had into the pot, we wouldn't have enough money to make a dent in what it'll cost to do that. But as our population grows, as the labor base is here, as the land base is here, whether it's individual people who buy a property or who have owned property, or whether it's builders, developers who own, they got rights. This is a big property rights state. People have the right to build and to develop. So the answer is
Don't have the right to rezone their own property. The property has to be rezoned by you guys in the council.
most of it could already be developed.
You got 5,000 acres down against Toledo Lakes that the developer is trying to get rezoned from agriculture to high density or to either high density or
That's not
gated
true.
community.
That's not true at all.
Really?
The estates hasn't been touched, the estates isn't being
Not
touched.
just, it's actually, it's across from the estates. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh,
You know,
Toledo,
Fred, if you-
320?
The 320 project was zoned, all that land had no zoning designation.
Had no zoning, wasn't zoned agricultural. In fact, it was always intended that that was the buffer, that that was the area that was gonna get developed. How it was gonna get developed is a whole nother story, but it was never zoned agriculture. And in the ULDC rewrite, we never rezoned 1 square foot of what is in the estates. We left it, we didn't even change the designation to agricultural estates because
That's
people
not
don't
in
know
the
what's in it.
Well, it wasn't discussion.
Yeah, but with the, yeah,
Yeah,
it was discussion.
But-
But with the 320 project, that was something that it was, I could have sworn there was some kind of agricultural, it wasn't zoned agricultural, but it was within the no zoning. But with, the thing was, is they own the property. And then per the city, you know, what we did with citizens was follow it, was, you know, you got the neighborhood notification. So we presented, and I thought we gave a pretty good, damn good presentation, which was basically months of hard work for the citizens sitting right in this room, working on it. We did a good presentation of why it shouldn't be built there. So it went ahead was because it wasn't right. I mean, you could put industrial somewhere else, but right up at the end there with the preserves, it wasn't a good idea. So now this whole project is on hold because the residential area is cutting across FPL's right of way, and they won't give them the right of way to put the single family home on. And what I find ironic is when they split that in half, the industrial 55 acres was supposed to be separate because they wanted to put, they had a customer that was ready to come in and they were ready to go. It's not there. And I guarantee you that customer backed out because what they're doing, when they do their Swift mud permitting, they're not permitting separate. They are including that whole 320. I don't know if that's something that Swift mud makes them do, but they didn't split it out in their Swift mud application to work on that industrial first.
I think what's the issue of that area has to do with access to power and electric for what was envisioned to go there. And, you know, there are a myriad of types of businesses that fall under the definition of light industrial that aren't what most of us would think of as industrial. And I think that that was, you know, some of what was the thought process. Very few employees and no real manufacturer, but the type of business that was contemplated there fell into the category of light industrial. And again, it's not built yet because there's issues of power and utilities and infrastructure. So whether it gets done or not, it remains to be seen. And the back piece is another issue because of all the wetlands. So nothing's been decided on that yet either. That's another struggle whether or not that'll even happen. But, you know, all these projects, again, you know, for every project, if you live in close proximity, if what's being built or contemplated to be built affects you in an adverse way, then it's a concern. And the tough part is it in the best interests of the city? Should the city leadership make decisions based on those loudest voices who say, this affects me? You know, don't change the zoning on Price Boulevard. Yet it's one of our most traveled thoroughfares, inevitably should be a mixed use environment. And yet anyone who lives there will say, I didn't want this. I didn't move here for this. You shouldn't do this. So how do you reconcile it? If we only did what everybody wanted us to do, we wouldn't do anything.
That's what you guys got elected for, to do what the voters wanted you to do.
To do what's in the best interests of the city and the best for the most.
The voters voted you guys in for a specific reason.
Yep.
And it wasn't to do the best interest of $150 million police station or this project or that project that basically are ego projects for the people.
Well, you say that because you feel relatively safe in the city and feel good about it.
Are we in a high crime zone?
You could be.
Exactly. When you put 200,000 people in here in apartment buildings, you're going to get high
You
crime.
say we. You make it sound like we, the city, are putting these people here. We're not putting them here. People own this property. They're going to come whether you
People own
like it or
single
not.
family lots here. They didn't have them turned into multifamily.
Doesn't matter whether they turn into a single family property or a
Are you
multi
kidding me?
property.
Are you kidding me?
Ultimately, 250,000 people will come here. That's going to bring with it tremendous need.
So we have to pay for the police station for 250,000 people.
You voted no.
Exactly, and it's like a bad relative that keeps showing up. And from what I understand, it's gonna go on the November ballot again. Or it's gonna be done with or without, the city manager said he's gonna do it with or without voter approval.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Have you been to the police station?
Have I been to?
Yes.
No,
You can
I
go
have been
tour.
by the police station.
No, I really I encourage you to go tour it sometimes
Okay.
because they're in little tiny, what were storage closets out back.
Okay.
And there's no holding cells because they're being used for storage. So every time somebody's arrested, they have to go to Sarasota with them. And
Okay,
it takes them out of this area. There's a multitude of issues.
why is it bigger cities than ours have smaller police departments and smaller police stations?
I mean, I think if you went to see the police station here, you would understand that it's a need. It's not something, it's a need.
Here's a good example. You know,
And it's not, ego.
yeah,
Sorry.
you're raising though honest, legitimate questions that
Yep.
people do want to know and understand the answers to. We'll take Bradenton, because that came most recent, $35 million police thing. What does Northport need? $115 million police force? Well, Bradenton's 14 square miles. We're 104.
Wow.
They have a population of 60,000. We already are almost at 100. Fort Myers, who started off with a much lower costed project, that's now looking at 140 million to build their police.
That's what we were told originally from the CM. We were told it was gonna be 136 to 140. And you know how construction projects are. That's like Price Boulevard was gonna be 60 million. And now it's 80 million. So if we start out at 140 million, by the time it gets done, it's probably gonna be 180 million.
Actually, it's not. And the reason why is because if you look close to the language for that, as well as the solid waste transfer station and the wastewater treatment plant, they ask to be able to borrow money or issue bonds to pay for those, had a not to exceed number. We build now to those budgets. We can't build to those budgets. How are we going to pay for it? If you all voted yes on the solid waste transfer station, $14 million, and contracts came in at 16, how are we going to pay for it? We don't have the money for it. So we build to that, a not to exceed number. And that's how we do most of our contracts now are that way, because otherwise, like you say, costs just get out of line. Price was an anomaly. Let's face it, we had a tough storm, wiped out a bunch of bridges. I mean, it caused some additional damage that required some additional investment. But then again, I would say 15 years ago, Price should have been started. And what was a $5-6
I was here 15 years ago. I was here 20 years ago.
And what was a
The price was
$5-6 million?
supposed to have been wide back then.
Right, and what was a $5 or $6 million project became an $80
Exactly.
million project. So
And it's gonna be.
how important it is not to kick the can, to figure out a way to make it work. And the growth, whether it's a combination of multifamilies or it's just all single-family platted land, that would be the worst that could happen to us from a financial standpoint, because it's the
It's
least.
not about a financial step. It's about quality of life. What you people don't get is quality of life.
How-
I moved here for quality of life.
But how's your quality of life if you're gonna pay 3 times the taxes you're paying now?
I'm paying 3 times the taxes that I paid when I moved in here. My house payment went up $150 a month.
And I'm telling you that if,
Just for taxes and interest.
if you and I live long enough and the city doesn't develop non-residentially, we'll pay 3 times more than we're paying now.
For 20 years, my taxes have not gone down.
You need to address that. That's not fact for city. County property tax is not the same as taxes here.
I'm talking
Then-
about non-ad valorem taxes.
Ha-
Every year you raise all the
Nope.
non-ad valorem taxes, 10%, 15%.
Go ahead.
Do it.
Our millage, you're right, our millage rate has not gone up. This will be the 6th year, the millage rate, the actual.
For
property
3 years it
tax
hasn't
rate.
gone up. I know that.
6, it'll be 6.
6 years. User fees, water and sewer, solid waste, fire rescue, absolutely. Every one of them's gone up, and it'll probably continue to go up to keep pace with being able to supply the basic services that everybody
I'm
wants.
on social security. My social security said my cost of living went up 2.5% last year. Not 15%, 2.5%.
But the city's
You
cost,
guys raised my electric bill more than that,
but
Okay, but you're living in a growing city. That's
and
number one.
okay?
So you have to account for the fact that when you moved here, what was the population?
I don't know. I didn't really care. I moved here.
What is the population now?
25,000 in
What's the
2010.
population now?
We only 25,000 in
We all are gonna have to pay more
2094,000.
taxes in a
Okay,
growing
so
city.
why haven't my taxes gone down? All these other people are paying into the tax pool.
Because in order to have a growing city and a proper infrastructure,
That is the same BS.
but okay,
You
it
tell
seems like,
me if you get more people paying into the same service, the price has got to go up on that?
yep,
absolutely.
you know,
Again,
that's what I'm trying to tell you.
If you buy one egg, it's going to cost you more money than if you buy a
It's
dozen.
not an
You
act,
have to be
it's
able-
not an act
You
and a half.
have to be able to look at two sides of the coin. You can't be this focused on your side, okay? Because the commission, the city manager, staff cannot just say, what's going to benefit this particular little section and this gentleman? We have to look at the city as a whole. So you have to be willing to.
So you're telling me I have to pay more money for more people to move in here?
I'm telling you, you have to be able to look at both sides, take into consideration. You can't just shake your head no.
I'm taking into consideration.
That's the problem with what we have
people
going on in the city.
I heard the same thing when I moved here from up north, and this reason.
I moved here from up north too, from New York.
All they would
I know
say
what
is,
goes on.
we'll bring more industry here, we'll bring more people here, and your taxes will go down. Taxes went up. Now it's 20 years later, the town is deserted, half the businesses have left, all the big corporations that came there depreciated all their property out, and they're gone. So now they have no.
You're focusing on a little section of what goes on in
I'm
the city.
focusing on what.
You're focusing on what you want to focus on. And if I can, please, what's wrong with the citizenry and what we're trying to settle here today is trusting the government, trusting our local municipality and the decisions they make. If we are that close-minded as citizens and have one only objective, to look at only one side of the coin, then we will never get together as a community. We have to be able to look at two sides of the coin. Your position is great, and I understand it. I totally get it, but there's a whole nother city.
I go to the city
And
council
almost
meeting,
back
and they say you can't
200,000
ask
people.
anybody questions. You can't ask staff questions, you can't
But
ask.
you can, but you have to be respectful. You're very passionate, and I understand your passion, because I get that way too. And I gotta hold myself back sometimes. But in order for communication to be respectful, to understand each other's perspective, we have to give each other the chance to speak and listen and understand. And maybe we're not 100% correct. Maybe, oh, you know what, he makes a good argument here. Let me look at that. And how does that affect me? And how does that affect our community as a whole? You have to be able to look at the community as a whole also, when you're stating your concerns.
You made a
And again, I respect your
You
concerns.
made a good point. You said, you know, am I gonna have to, with all these people coming here, why am I having to pay more? Well, we're fighting hard to make sure you don't. And the way we do it is, I'm trying to tell you, every single family lot that gets developed, every quarter acre lot costs us as a city more money than what that quarter acre lot pays in. But when you develop smartly, when you create commercial and industrial and mixed-use areas, you're able to turn that situation so that there's more revenue coming in than it costs to take care of it. Good example.
Let me ask you a
It doesn't
question.
take as many people to police a higher density area than it does a bunch of single-family lots spread out all over the city. So the idea is that you have to have a plan so that over 10, 20 years, we don't continue to allow the city to just grow up residentially with single-family lots. Because if you think we pay a lot now, believe me when I tell you, we will pay $10 to the thousand on a millage rate. It will drive people out of the city because they won't be able to
You're
afford to
driving
live.
people out of the city now. Let me.
We're the second fastest growing city in America. We are the most livable city in the state of Florida. How can you say that?
Answer this question honestly. If what you say is true, and the more business you bring in, the lower taxes are gonna be. What about Chicago? What about New York? They have, I come from Cleveland. We have plenty of industry there. Taxes were low, taxes kept going up.
You're comparing apples with oranges. You're talking about, because you're talking about cities that have enormous development, that have millions of people, that have old infrastructure and old development.
Northport's 65 years old. It was not that long ago, just a handful of people living out in the hinterlands to get away from Port Charlotte. We don't have industrial and commercial areas of our city that are old and decayed, that need hundreds of millions and billions in refurbishment. We're trying to figure out how this little bedroom residential community that is plotted for 250,000 people, how are we going to help it grow in a way that doesn't make it so cost prohibitive for most of us to live here? The only way we've had to do that is to stimulate non-residential growth in the city and to create other types of housing types that people will be attracted to. Not everybody wants a 1/4 acre lot. Some people don't want to take care of anything. We have an aging population. We have a young population. And people don't want to be housebound, house struggle, house poor. They want a lot of different variety of product. Take Star Farms or Toledo Village. Prior to 2008, that developer wanted to build 3,600 single-family homes there. Thank God the depression, the recession of 2008 buried that project for a lot of years. They came back not long after I got on the commission. And they came before commission and said, well, economy's better now, Northport's growing, everything's great. We'd like to further our project. We want to develop. Okay, what do you want to do? 3,600 single-family homes. We said, are you out of your mind? The commission said, no. Go back, figure something else out. We have people who are looking for all kinds of housing types, more affordable housing types. You got to do something. What do you give back to the city? Okay, we're going to have water, we're going to have drinking water demands, we're going to have reclaimed water demands, we're going to have infrastructure demands. What are you going to do for the city if you do this? So they went back, they changed their plan. Now it's going to be, if it ever gets to be done, once the infrastructure's in, they're going to build a variety of housing types. They agreed, the developer did out there, to build a 20-acre public park, which their special district will not only build, but will maintain in perpetuity for all the citizens in the city to be able to enjoy, not just the people that live out there. That's an example of how you try to work with your partnerships. We don't have enough money to do all this on our own. We're going to have to do it with the help of development. But individual single-family lots will kill our city in time. It will make it so cost prohibitive.
Okay, tell me, where's the water coming from?
We got a lot of water. We just purchased over 2 million gallons a day from Peace River. We have the capability to build or to dig more wells. We have plenty of water. Part of it's getting it to where it needs to be. That's our big problem, is putting in the infrastructure and doing it in an environmentally sensible way.
That's the other thing.
I asked the CM when they brought this, all these, the rezoning. He's pushing 250,000 people, need to have all the people. And where's the water coming from? You know what my answer was? Well, it's concurrent. We'll think about that when we get there.
No, he didn't say that. Come
I
on.
bet.
Yeah, I know he didn't say that.
Yes, he did.
No, he didn't say that. Because we already know where the water's gonna come from. Sir, I have a question back there. I gotta let some
I have
other
a question.
people talk. Sir.
You know, go in line with what he's asking, some of his concerns, and I know there are concerns, seniors, I'm a real estate agent, but a lot of seniors are concerned, hey, I don't get so much my social security, now I gotta pay my, home price went up and everything, I can't afford it. So my question is, has there ever been any kind of studies or task force to find out, hey, ways to reduce costs in the city? Maybe you guys have already done this, and I'm way behind, whatever, but it seemed like if there's some sort of task force, maybe even look at the charter and why, okay, now we just raise money by that and glory, but not ad valorem, right? So maybe there's other ways, maybe there's other ways. And has there been any kind of task force to look at, hey, can we reduce costs here? And can we reduce costs here? Can we look at these contracts we've got? Has anybody looked over, maybe they're busy, maybe they, hey, we hurry up and get this contract, but we could have saved $20,000, and I know maybe it costs more money to do something like that than what you save, I don't know. But I just asked some questions.
All the time, all the time. People wonder why government moves so slow. A good portion of the reason is because there are so many hurdles to go through. There are so many things. Not everything has to be bid out, but most anything of a significant nature should be bid out. It usually is, unless there's a reason why, maybe it can only be provided by certain sources. But yeah, all the time. Remember, we've balanced the budget. This is going to be the 6th year in a row without raising the actual property tax rate. Now, I get that the user rates for the services we get, whether it's water and sewer, whether it's solid waste pickup, whether it's, fire rescue, all those increases are based on studies by third-party consultants. A couple of years ago, we thought, well, we were way behind on a lot of our fees. So we thought, well, what if we raised some of those fees, right? And brought them up to what market was, market meaning comparable communities. And when we did that, there was an outcry that how do you have how do you, with our tax dollars, how do you make a decision to do that, to raise those fees to market without doing a study? So we went and did a study, and the studies took a year to do because that's what they take. And guess what? Turns out the fees we were proposing to raise weren't even as much as what the study said they should be. So the answer to your question is yes, we do all the time. Are there ways to be more efficient? Just like there's ways to better communicate, there's always ways to tighten your belt. And this commission has told staff every year when staff said, we're going to have to look at, the revenue side. And this commission and last commission said the same things. It ain't happening, not in this environment. Figure out how to make that budget balance without raising our property tax rates. Fees have gone up. I wouldn't deny that because.
Well, I think part of what their discussion was in trust is if you share that information, I've never seen anything like that. So, and maybe I'm Johnny come lately or something, and I'm just not really paying attention, but if you share it and say, hey, look, we've done this is being done now. So people may have more trust and say, well, you know what, they are doing what they can. I haven't seen that.
We do it all the time. You can go on the city's fake webpage and you can track every department's progress. You can see what all those rates are. You can see how, and if there's not if we live in a world of the sunshine where every single thing that government does is under public scrutiny and is available for anybody to look at. Now, it's how you communicate it. How could we possibly, we're already up to a staff of, I think, 11 people in communications, and people say our communication's lousy. I don't want 30 people spending our tax dollars trying to tell people what they could already know if they went and searched it. Because they do. I mean, we got people in this room who are real diligent about digging out information.
How would you go about making sure that you're spending it diligently? That's what I'm getting at.
And that is what we do, day in and day out.
Well, that's what I think you need to figure out a way to make sure. Maybe some of the meetings, I've been to some of the commission meetings, it's been a while, but I've been to some, and I'm not seeing any discussions like that.
It's usually attached to an agenda item.
Yeah.
Where you'll have a consultant's report on fees, on the city's fee schedule. There'll be consultant's report attached. Yeah, they'll be attached to a specific agenda item. So if you just were to, yeah, if you were just to look at, let's say, the city commission agenda, which is on their website, just go to the meetings and go to the agenda, right, meetings? And you can just look at the agenda, and then when you look at the agenda, you'll see the different attachments attached to a specific agenda item. Or you can go in and search on the commission meetings agenda, your search word, consultant's report on city fee schedule. And it'll come up with those meetings. And then you click on the meeting and attach to the agenda item
There's really,
will be the reports.
there's really not a
So
whole
it is
lot
there.
that we can
Actually, they're doing
do.
a much better job than they used to do.
I mean, there really is, you know, when it comes to spending taxpayer dollars, the laws are pretty good in terms of trying to hold government accountable. Is there bad government at times? Sure. Are there bad elected officials at times? Sure. Are there bad department heads and staff at times? Sure. But, you know, you look at this city and nobody's stealing money. Nobody's getting rich at the expense of the taxpayers here. We're all working very hard to try to manage what is an exploding city and can't control it, the growth, but we can try to develop it in a smart way, in an intelligent way, in a way that we think is going to benefit the city as a whole and the majority of the people. And that's our daily goal. Yes, ma'am.
So my is kind of personal because I'm in one of the activity centers. Sorry, I'm doing one of the things here. I'm in activity center 3, and it has profoundly affected a few of my neighbors. My neighbor to the left of me wanted to, he bought a lot next to him, build a house for his sister, now he can't. So why, when you guys knew that people were really upset about DC, and people really opposed it, you had all the newspapers that everybody was like against it. Why didn't you guys put the brakes on it for a little bit and maybe make more meetings to try and accommodate, not accommodate completely, but like listen to the people that were really going to be affected? There's a few neighborhoods, like my neighborhood's completely changed. There's no more single family homes allowed. It's only like condos or restaurants, and it's like the only thing that they can't build is single family homes, strip clubs, and casinos. That really affects my neighborhood. Is only 3 streets. It's like not even. It's like 2.5. So that really affects the people. I know 3 people in just those little streets that now their lives are just like, well, we bought this land and now we can't do what we want to do with it. Now we gotta wait for a developer to come buy it. You know, we have to have, what is that, a whole acre to do something. So how do you guys not think that the trust is lost? When you guys knew people were pissed about it, and you guys say, okay, let's try and like talk to people about it. Like, how can we make it work a little bit better?
And see, you hit on an issue that, for me, was a big reason for this meeting. You see, you have a specific issue. Now, I could say to you, you live at Sumter and 75. How could you have ever thought that that wasn't going to get developed commercially and explode with the hospital and everything else? It's a major interchange. You live on Toledo Blake, you live on Price. Really, people, how could you figure living on arterial roads like that, this city wasn't going to develop up around you? And that's sort of been the attitude, right, of the city. So it's kind of arrogant. It's like, gee, I mean, you should have known better. No, that doesn't solve your problem, obviously. But what also doesn't solve the other side of that coin is, so you said if you wanted to build trust, well, is trust dependent on doing what you want? because how do we do what everybody wants? So if I can't do what you want, is that a reason not to trust us anymore? People didn't vote for these referendums
But why,
because they didn't trust.
why did you take some of the rights of people's properties away? They bought those properties when they were residential, and now they are no longer residential.
You know what? You live there, no one's taking your home away from you.
I
And,
know that, but
and in fact,
that's not the point. The
Yeah.
point is,
The 7-Eleven's gonna be in the backyard.
we know that there's this, that big chunk of land is literally right on 75. We thought, knowing that that's probably gonna be a gas station someday or whatever it might be. But to go from, I'm pretty sure that the first ULDC that I saw, it was supposed to be that big chunk of land, I don't think it's just 10 acres or whatever it is, that one big chunk, before the neighborhood. And then all along some areas, the only supposed to be that was gonna be changed. And then all of a sudden, boom, the whole thing is big, and now.
it was always for 10 years, it was planned that the city
It doesn't
rezone.
matter. You guys, why couldn't you guys have added, why couldn't you have just added the other things to be built? Why did you have to take away single-family homes? I know 3 specific people, families, that their dreams are gone because they cannot build single-family homes. Now their only option is, like my neighbor, he's gonna have to figure out how to attach a thing to his house so that it's part of his house. But the other 2 families that bought there, they no longer can build, they have to build a duplex. The smallest thing they can do is build a duplex. That's the little smallest thing that they can do. So like, why did you guys take that away from people? It's kind of like infringing on people's rights.
You could look around the city and look at every part of the ULDC rezoning, and people who live in close proximity to all those areas will say exactly what you said. We have people out in Activity Center 6 and 10 who say the same thing. I bought land out here.
Why did you take that one right away? I think people would have been more than okay with knowing, like, we know that that was gonna possibly happen someday, that that wasn't gonna just be residential. We knew that someday there was gonna be condos or duplexes or multi-family. We're not dumb. But like, why did you take away a single-family homes?
Because
I think that's why people would have not been so upset about the fact that we would push through, and even people were mad. You guys didn't listen to anybody.
It's that they don't make enough money.
What would be the fix other than taking away? What's the other option?
Bring back the opportunity for people to build single-family homes. Why was that taken away? It was a neighborhood. Only single-family homes were allowed to be, it was residential, 100%, whatever, low density, what it was called before. And then all of a sudden, ULGC went through, which we knew was gonna go through. We were not dumb, we're not naive about it. We're on something, we understood that. But the ULGC was changed, and now single-family homes are no longer. It's only single-family homes, like I said, bars and strip clubs and casinos are the only things that are not. Why? Why did you take away the single-family homes? We understand that there's growth, and we have to understand that other things, but why are we gonna be okay with, huge garages being put in,
So-
or office buildings?
So if we
but not a single-family?
carve out your, let's say, a couple of miles circumference around your neighborhood, then what about the people who own the land on the edge of that? Then they say, well, why can't I build my single family? The answer is, because at some point in the ULDC rewrite and the redesign of the city, there are areas that are zoned to be something other than residential. And even though in every one of these areas, it affects some people who are already own property that they either have built a home or planned on building a home, that this affects. It is impossible.
Why didn't you just let them in? That's why I know.
Because if we left it in for your neighborhood, what about the neighborhood a mile out? And
I'm talking about all the activity centers.
because if you did that, then we would never be able to develop non-residentially, which is what the plan is to do.
But you
Now-
can build a duplex there, is that what you said?
I think that's the smallest thing that you could do.
Or you can go with the Burt-Harris Act and you can,
That's what I've been saying all this time, you guys are in agreement.
but unfortunately, rezoning, the way it was done, very bad. The communication with the citizenry was horrendous. And they could have done a better job in notification. So that we could hear you, we could hear you, we could hear you, we could hear everybody's concerns. And maybe, there could have been some alterations, maybe. Probably not because of that whole area and what's going to be going in there. It's all planned out. It's all planned out with what's going in there now. And unfortunately, people like you, the other people that got the shitty end of the stick.
Then you did the same thing with Prime. People along Price knew so you wanted the boulevards. But they didn't know their homes were gonna be taken away by developers. So that's the
See, that's not true, because it's not going to be taken away, because if you own a house on Price Boulevard,
You can stay there.
and your heirs can stay there, and their heirs can stay there, and forever. But guess what? If any one of you along the chain decides you want to sell it,
They-
you not only now have residential prospects, but you also have some commercial or retail prospects, which should enhance the property's value, because there will be more options available to you on
So
Price
if
Boulevard.
my house is right here and people around me have sold their houses and they've been taken over by developers, then,
Dollar General.
then, how is that gonna make my property worth more? When I'm living next to all these businesses, and that's what
It would-
I'm saying to you all with the
It would be
whole
worth a lot less if nothing else could go in there, because who's going to want to buy your single-family residential house on Price Boulevard where a third of your front property or more got taken away, and it's now going to be like even more traverse than it ever was before?
They didn't have a problem buying that house in the first place, and they knew that the city had an easement on part of that
They
property.
knew the street would
Yeah.
be widened, but not that their house, their whole residential part would have to be.
Did
taken
anybody get
care of.
notified on price that they were gonna
No,
get turned into?
There was no notification. And I have argued this from the very beginning, that it wasn't right.
Yes, sir.
No good.
We went to the meeting when they announced that they were going to widen fronts. And some of the engineers were throwing out, this is what we're going to do. When you put in 4 lanes, you need 120 feet to work with to get all your,
5 lanes. There's a no turn lane. 5 lanes.
I don't know about lanes. I'm talking about you need 120 feet. You know how many feet they have? 100. But that didn't stop anybody. If you're gonna do that, then you have to eminent domain one side of the street or the other, or otherwise you're, and at the end of the meeting, they said, and unfortunately, when we're done with this project, it's going to be inadequate. I don't know if they have minutes of those meetings, but it's down, read it. It's a good book.
What else? Yes.
Have a statement and then. There's I don't know where the heck it is, it's on the city website somewhere. There's a little chart that says citizens, commissioner, city manager. And I always teach my staff, shit flows downstream. It doesn't flow upstream. There's a clog in the toilet. We're all here because we want to fix it, okay? So now, as far as the transparency, I think what the commission can do is, you're elected by the group, by us, the citizens, and we want you to represent us. You're representing the people that like what's going on, and you also represent the people that don't like what's going on. So we need to meet in the middle somewhere.
Yep.
An example for Christina with Activity Center 3, activities, the ULDC is an ordinance, and I know Elena said ordinances can be changed, the comp plan can't. So in that ordinance, you've got Activity Center 3, which has got a master plan that you guys voted on, and it's gonna be working. So now, I would hope that part of the master plan is involving the citizens. So now you've got all those activity center 3 uses that you can put some of those uses closer to 75, and some of those uses that are more suitable for residential area, they can go in her area. Same thing with the police station. I think for the most part, some of the people voted no because of the price tag. They didn't want the big 125, and I know you had to do it because of the construction costs. But as Ray's point, why should I pay for something? You might have been able to get a good police station in there for 85 million, and then when the 250 people, 250 whatever come, then build it out again for that. And that's basically what I'd like to see is more citizen input. I know we have the advisory boards, but some of the other things is, like I said, you just need more input into the commission meetings. And I know I spoke to a couple of the commissioners when they were running, and I spoke to City Manager Fletcher the other week. And also when you guys are doing those town halls for the referendum. I'd like to see at least once a quarter, once every other month, a meeting with all 5 of the commissioners in, so we can ask you questions. And it's not on 5 million different subjects. It's just one subject matter so that you can cover more groundwork, hear what the citizens have to say, because I know you have to represent everyone. So that's one thing. And then also, I believe during the workshop that the city manager had said something about, coming forward that when the staff recommends something, and I know you have to rely on the staff, and after going through the North Park government class, I love the staff. They, I can say that, but I forgot to say during my public comment that they're very enthusiastic about their job. So you got these people here that know what they're doing. So I think one of the things he mentioned was going forward, the staff will make a recommendation, but they're also going to give you 2 other options to look at at least give you a choice.
Well,
Okay.
let me stop you there because, that occurred because I asked. You know, over the last 3.5 years, we built a staff, department heads, support staff of people that really are a notch above. They are, in their own rights, they're subject matter experts. And they could command jobs, some of these people, anywhere in this nation. They're that good at what they do. But guess what? Their job is to stay very focused on what they see as the best interests of the city. You got 5 people who got elected who represent the citizens. So our charter is kind of pretty specific about what it says staff does and what commission does. And commission doesn't have a whole lot of control over the day-to-day operations of the city. That the what we do, the direction, how we spend our dollars, we do, but the day-to-day operations are staff. And what concerns me, and I'm sure concerns a lot of people in the city, or some people in the city, was that it appears that staff just runs the city. It makes the decisions, it decides what's best, and then it goes ahead and does it. And it sells it to the commission, and it sells it to the citizens, or whoever the citizenry will listen to it or buy it. And then we plow forward. So I said, we have obvious disconnect. We have a lack of trust. And even on the commission's part, you know, we had a commissioner who turned out, who was a bulldog. She dug into every damn thing, sometimes to all our chagrin, but she dug, she questioned, she doubted, she forced staff to account for what they were doing and what they were thinking and what they were recommending. And since she is no longer on that commission, I've sensed personally that that disconnect. And I've tried harder. So I went to senior city staff and I said, when something like the bridge that went on the consent agenda was put on there, which could have very easily been simply approved, okay? Thank goodness for Pete Emmerich, who was here then and knew how people felt about it. Thank goodness for Debbie McDowell, who put the bug in the ears of 2 new commissioners. I was focused on impact fees and some other agenda items. And I was not a happy camper for any of you who saw that and watched that YouTube back.
And that's one of the major topics of mistrust, is sneaking stuff on that consent agenda.
So what we decided, and the reason city manager said what he did, is because I said, I don't want to be managed, okay? I don't work for staff. I represent the citizens. I appreciate staff are experts. I appreciate that they're going to have opinions and recommendations about how things should get done. But you also, as staff, have an obligation to educate the commission and anyone else in the citizenry who is going to listen as to all the perspectives regarding certain subjects that come before a commission. I want to know what the pros and cons are. I want to know what the repercussions are. I want to know what went on. I went back and read those agreements on that bridge. And no one will ever convince me that that bridge wasn't the reason why everybody supported that 500 houses, because it was going to be an access to 41. It was going to take pressure off of Sumter Boulevard. It was a brilliant thing to do. It was the right thing to do. Now you got 2 partners who broke up, and the one who remains in control has built 50 homes, has certificates of occupancy for 50, doesn't have a legal obligation to finish the bridge until it's at 250. And this comes before us to simply invalidate the agreement over my dead body. And that's what I said. And I was not a happy guy, and I pissed off a lot of people in the city.
Okay, but what if, and this was supposed to be resolved when we amended the commission policy on these meetings, on the consent agenda. No hot topics or sensitive topics should be appearing on that consent agenda. Because thank God you'll look into something. Thank God we had McDowell calling you. Thank God we got eyes all over the place looking at that, right? And we're calling you. But what if we got a new commission and you've got 20 agenda items under the consent agenda?
Yeah.
Who's to say that you guys ain't too tired to look at it? And
Well, we better be pretty damn careful who we,
like
we better be pretty careful who we elect.
Spring, like the Springhaven Drive extension,
Yeah,
like the War Mineral Springs P3.
yeah.
Okay, I could go on and on and on about things being snuck on a consent agenda.
Yep,
This is another mistrust
yep,
that we've got.
yep,
So, so that was,
yep,
so that has to stop.
yep.
So whose job is it to approve the agenda? The city manager.
Well,
So what does the commission say to the city manager to ensure that that consent agenda? Because what if you're all sleeping? And again, you know what I mean?
well, you know
We're
what?
trusting that you guys are awake for attention what's on that consent.
There are, from the time that agenda is posted, and staff post it together based on what's happened in prior meetings, what we know needs to come before commission for approvals or disapprovals that have time delays, that are things that are being worked on. But there are numerous points through the process where commission has the ability through their briefings. I mean, I go to a briefing before every commission.
So then how come that appeared on the consent agenda in the first place, the bridge?
That's right.
How did it appear?
Got by me. Shouldn't have.
That's what we're concerned about.
That's
It
right.
got by
But
you,
guess what?
you know?
It didn't get past the commission when it came before us. And so you could argue.
Because you got phone calls from citizens, you got McDowell calling you, bringing it to your attention, hey, What's up with this?
You know what?
But what if you didn't have those phone calls, you know?
You had a commissioner before anything was heard from the public, who went right to city manager and said, this can't be on consent agenda. We're gonna have to talk all about this. That happened before anyone else even knew what was going on.
So when well, again, with the agenda then, if that's what happened, then why did it appear under the consent agenda,
pulled.
not a separate item?
It was
Why
already-
did it have to be pulled in the first place if you talk to the city manager on a regular basis and say, hey, and you got some idea
You
what's
know
gonna be
why?
on the agenda?
Because when he said, do you want me to just pull it off the consent agenda?
Yeah.
We said, you know what, leave it where it is, because it's never gonna get passed. We're already pulling it as an item, and we're gonna discuss it, and we're gonna.
But when we, the citizens, see that on a consent agenda,
Yeah.
we don't know what's going on in the back office.
Yeah.
And you've already spoken about it. We only see, oh, look at that, oh, not only is that on the consent agenda, oh, look at this.
Yep.
Sneaking it in there. So if it was pulled and didn't even get on the consent agenda, that's one lack of, we don't trust you. We wouldn't have to say that. Do you know what I mean? It's little things.
And they all build up.
They do. And it's the little things that add to the lack of trust in the community.
And you know whose responsibility that is? Commission. Not city staff, commission. If there's anyone who should take the beating for that, it's commission. Commission's responsibility. We represent you. If we miss something, if staff slips something in or sick, remember, okay, I'll wear that hat for a minute. Developer comes and says, geez, I got an issue here, like the cost of this bridge went up over $1 million. We can't afford to pay it. We don't have the money to build that bridge. And the way the agreement was written, the city who had agreed in the contract to reimburse the developer for that bridge through impact fees, which is a kosher deal, that's legitimate. But if the cost of the bridge increased, the city was only obligated to pay 10% of that increase. So the city was capped at the original cost plus 10%. Well, of course, the developer came to the city and said, geez, like, we don't have the money to build it. We can't build it. And staff said, somebody must have thought, gee, that's probably close to $2 to $3 million worth of impact fees that we won't have to reimburse them for. What could we, what better use would there be for that money? Okay, legitimate that staff might think along those lines. Well, what about thinking about all the people who live all around that area who supported this project, who are going to be adversely affected by the fact that there won't be a bridge built? That's commission's responsibility. And commission has to work harder and do better at that. Debbie did great at it.
Yes, you did.
Okay? And she set a good example for the rest of us. And since she's been gone, I've tried to do better at it. There's a lot to cover.
Yeah.
And not everybody needs to work at it. And when something that doesn't get on our radar screen, guess what? Most of the people, or a good number of the people in this room, are watching too, like you say. It takes a village, it takes a group. We're not perfect. But I want to come to an issue that became closer, and then I'll recognize you, Tim. Trust, you can build it or lose it for a lot of different reasons. When you make lousy decisions, when you are arrogant or condescending, when you get sneaky, all those are reasons to lose trust. What I hope is that if we do a number of these and this group grows and grows, is that just because we end up making decisions that someone or a group of people do not agree with, that compromises trust, because that's a problem. If we're open, honest, not just transparent, but more inclusive. We kind of say transparency. I think we try to be transparent. I'm not sure we're as good as being inclusive. And because inclusive gets tricky, because it's real easy for those who have more information than those who don't to think they know better. And
Well, we
that's
try and get the information out there.
Yep.
through social media channels. But we don't need to hear the put downs that we're the vocal minority, or don't pay attention to any of those social media Facebook pages because they're wrong, and the only real information is on the city's website, which is just plain bull. Because there's a few social media pages out there that all we do is push information, verify information with the city.
Public record information.
Then we get the public record requests before we put anything on these particular pages. So if you want to continue to build trust, you got to stop the labeling. You got to stop the isolation.
Yep.
Because when a citizen talks, whether you like it or not,
Yep.
we're talking.
That's right.
So consider it, respect it, and that comes from everybody, not just one commissioner. It comes from city manager, it starts with him.
And he has a lot of verbal,
Yeah,
we
he's
were at
got a
the
lot
first
to say
police
about the
station
vocal
thing,
minority.
and he was rolling his eyes, and we were right where we could hear him talking to people that were giving presentations, just ignore her. I was appalled. I
So
was so
that's
appalled.
about, she's right. So even when a commission meeting is going on, sometimes we see commissioners go, oh, God. Like when I got up, and almost every agenda item, oh, here she goes. I always got something to say, but hey, I'm a citizen. I can say whatever the heck I want on any agenda item, right?
That's right.
So to see sometimes you go like, oh, God, or you laugh or the city manager's rolling his eyes, or he gets up and just leaves, like in the middle of us talking.
Or he's on his
It's
phone.
disrespectful.
He's on his phone.
So you command respect, and I hope that everybody who comes before you will give you that respect. I do my best to give you that respect,
No, it's the
because you
city
deserve it.
manager.
So we're just asking for the same,
Manager needs to.
to recognize us and respect us. You don't need to roll your eyes, you don't need to go, oh, God, here she is again. Even though I would take it funny, because I know you. But somebody else won't,
Well, and Robin goes to, if you go to every meeting or just almost every meeting?
I used to, but I've got some health issues lately, so now I'm watching on the TV, on the.
Yeah, because when I watch on the
But
TV,
otherwise,
I
I'm
see
almost
the
at every single commission meeting because the citizens are calling me and saying, hey. Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay, I will now go before the commission and I will voice those concerns. And I would say 80%, they're very respectful. But when I see the city manager labeling, when I say, oh, God, like that, it just, people see it and it's another little thing that says, oh,
Do you have a sergeant of arms in those meetings?
yes.
There's usually police.
Put the heat on him. If he's sitting up there acting like a goon and you were the sergeant of arms, I'd stick you right on you. I put that
Sometimes the meetings go so long, like to 1, 2 in the morning. And we've been there at these meetings from the beginning. And we know people get tired. And we know people, when they get tired, they make little jokes or and it's okay. Because I might do it too, sitting in the audience. And I have done it. But it's understood to me, but for somebody who's watching, who doesn't get it, it's a whole different perspective, right?
True.
So
And look,
again, it's
It
little things.
goes without saying, everybody should be treated with respect. And any citizen who takes the time to wants to stand up and spend their 3 minutes are entitled to. We tease you when, because there's been meetings you come to where every single agenda.
Yes, I will get up there with every
You know what?
single
That's your legal right.
Right.
And while we'll tease and make jokes, you're always very respectful to our commission's access. There are some who are not quite so polite. And even then, it's our job to take it. I mean, it's hard to hear people when you are being verbally harassed. I'll use that expression, because sometimes we are.
Yeah, it sounds like my subject here. I feel like I may have a little bit of trust.
Sometimes it's hard to hear people when they try to, when they're delivering that message with that much passion. I'm always wanting to listen to people, but sometimes when over and over you are talked to as if you're a moron, and you are so indifferent, and you are so, like, just, I mean, sometimes it's so condescending that there's been times I've wanted to get up and just walk out and just say, like, I don't care how much you pay, I should not have to sit there and get verbally abused. I want to do it to them, and yet they're doing it to me. And that happens, and it happens fairly regularly whenever there's an issue item. But there is no excuse for any commissioner or any member of staff to act like you said they act, and they do. And it's been topics of conversation, and it will be topics of more conversation, because it gets in the way.
But
It
you
gets
asked
in
the
the way
commission,
and
can't you get
compromises.
direction to like city
Yes.
manager?
Yes, yes,
Thank you.
yes.
And that's all we're just asking for some little actions that contribute to the perception.
And
I don't care.
why I want to do this.
Yeah.
Okay, I can't make the others do it. Maybe they will on their own, okay? I made a note because I like the idea of doing once a quarter, all five under the sunshine and run it. I think that's a good idea. The more we five are in front of you all, the better to answer
I mean,
questions.
it takes, because there's such a disconnect and a mistrust going on, and it's only getting worse with what's going on all over the country.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's inciting some of the additional mistrust in our local municipality. But, with that said, I just, God. Let her weigh in.
I disagree with you when you say that the trust is built because you're pro-growth and some of us want the sleepy old Northport. I happen to be one of those. I never lose trust over y'all choosing something otherwise. But the budget hearing come out last week. They didn't put the backup materials in until 5 or 6 days before. That's not enough time for y'all to go through it, and it's certainly not for us that are just overwhelmed by it. The attitudes of your speakers coming up, it's not their problem, it's your problem, because they're reflecting that board and staff. It's happened. I just stay away, and I think most people are respectful, so I'm not sure I buy into that. But there are things that happen where you're not straightforward, and you can't get straight answers, or you choose. I happen to be at the excommunicated part, right? They just flat out respond to me. Why? Because I bring out the issues. I'm chasing the issues. We have real problems. I told you people were angry. And they're not angry because you're going, I get his passion. I'm kind of in his camp, but I also get we got to pay the bills, right? The police department, you said 85 million, or you made it a reasonable to build it to that. We can drive a Chevy. We're a Chevy city, not a Caddy city. I've said that again and again. And then I'm the bad guy because I don't support police. Well, that's horseshit.
Yeah.
Because I absolutely do.
Yep.
So I think some of that's happening. Your communications team, we disagree on too, because it's one way and it's shoving that agenda, whatever it is. You used Northport Forward, you use the radio station, you push that narrative. I call it a narrative. I don't know if that's an ugly word or not, but that's what how I see it. And there's no, and anybody that's against that gets cut off. Or gets embarrassed in a meeting, like I saw her get embarrassed because somebody gets through.
Yeah,
I think a big part is the commission needs to hold staff accountable, not because they don't see things differently. The unit, what happened with the unit contract? The quick switch at the end. We find it, but nobody can tell you how it outcomes. Is it going to be illegal? Maybe that's why nobody's talking about it. Then say so. We just lost our finance manager, I understand. That's a big change at this moment. What happened? Why did we bury those important things? And if you included everybody, or you almost said tonight, that you screwed up with Debbie because y'all were so ugly to her for 4 years. Because you admitted what she was doing the work, and others think, and I get it, I don't know that I could do the work Debbie did, which is probably why I would never run. Because it's a lot of work to do it right, and it's hard. And no matter what you do, you're gonna piss people off. I get that as well. So skin has to get thicker on your city manager certainly. And so I think most of the commission handles it pretty well. I don't know that.
Better than
Each
staff.
other.
You know, you bring up a good point when you say that the communications is messages staff's agenda, for lack of saying it another way. And part of the ongoing discussion that we're having, you know, individual members of the commission and staff, is that there has to be a little better balance between staff and commission. You call it holding them more accountable. I say that staff has over time, with a strong leader, which he is, no matter how you feel about him, he's strong. And he has filled a void that, quite frankly, elected officials have created.
How many FBLE investigations are open on our strong leader right now? And what kind of problems does that?
I don't know, you filed most of them, you should know.
I've only filed one of the three.
Well, look, I'm not gonna get there, because I'll tell you what, if you wanna think, do I think he does a good job? I think he's a great CEO. Do I think he's a good people person? I think he has a lot of challenges.
Okay, I can live with that.
But what I do is I don't hold him responsible. He's doing what commission is directing him to do, which is run this city
Day to day.
day to day. I fault commission, be included, this commission, our commission, past commission since he's got here, and probably future commissions after I'm long gone. Because it's the commission's responsibility to hold staff accountable, and it's commission's responsibility to make sure it controls the narrative and that it represents you not just in decisions about how our dollars get spent, but how you all feel about things. It's our jobs to figure out the balance. I spend probably 20 or 30% of my time going to city meetings. I spend 80% of my time out trying to get to know as many people in this city as I can, to hear what as many people think about as many different subjects as humanly possible, because that's my job too. And I just think it's been weak commissions, quite frankly, that have allowed a strong staff to take more control than it should. And I think the only ones that can fix that is.
Attention library patrons, the time is now 7:30. The library will be closing in 30 minutes. If you would like to apply for a library.
It's this city.
Attention
But-
computer users,
but
please
you
use the
bring up
computer.
a great
Now
point.
automatically
And
in
I
15 minutes at
It
7:45.
is, you.
If you need to
it
print
is
your state your
something
work,
that's
please.
on this commission's radar screen. You got two new guys who came in with eyes wide open. You've got a couple who are sitting on this commission who have sensed this issue. And we want to try to set it right going forward, because we don't know who's going to follow in the next round. And this stuff has to get more balanced so that all of you are that much more represented. But staff is never going to do that for us as a city. I'll talk as a citizen. They're not going to do that for us. We have to do it for ourselves, the people you elect and you all, because staff will always fill that void. They will always bring their expertise, their education, and fill that void with ideas, recommendations. They will drive the city's agendas forward. We have to decide which ones we let go forward, which ones we don't, and assume responsibility for those decisions. And that hasn't always been the case. I mean, I've been here 10 years, and believe me, that's not nearly as long as a lot of you have been here. You've seen a lot worse than I've seen. And it's a working process, this city. If we weren't so challenged with all that what's going on in the city, it might be a little easier to cope with some of this stuff, but it isn't. And every week, there's more that comes at us that's more challenging. And do we get it right? Not all the time. I mean, Mineral Springs is a perfect example. I got on that commission, inherited a P3 sitting on the table. I said, wow, what a great idea. A year later, I'm going, this wasn't the right direction. So you got to be willing to say you made a mistake. You didn't have all the facts. You didn't say, and
And that's just one example. So perfection you're not gonna get. The key is, can we keep talking to each other respectfully? Can we know, like, I'm so happy to hear Stephanie say, it's not, trust is not predicated on doing what people want. It's doing what we think is in the best interest of everyone in the right way.
But good governance at the top of your strategic list. Follow the rules, don't break the sunshine, don't make decisions behind the scenes. To me, that's what shapes my trust. And it's wide open and evident.
Well, you're right on one thing for sure. We didn't solve all the problems in the city tonight. But I'm really glad you had this. And I wanted to ask you, what's the best way for us when we come up with ideas that are constructive, even negative ones, but should we email the commissioners individually?
If you send something to one of us, they'll typically distribute it to all of us. So it's best to send it to the commission and it gets to all of us. That's the way to do it.
Yeah, because a lot of people here are so-called subject matter experts because we live here. But I like doing this. And when I was at the Eden brief before the referendum vote, I was going around talking to each department. And I felt their frustration because they feel like they know so much in their area of how to best serve the city. Yeah, on the other hand, I'm going out there, I'm burying birds, rabbits, gopher tortoises. I mean, as far as the development goes. So, I talked to the city manager about what happened in the 1960s. John F. Kennedy, when he was president, went to the Space Center and he met with the people there and there's a janitor and he asked him, what are you doing? He said, I'm helping to put a man on the moon. And I realized that's the attitude we all have to think what's best for the city, everybody. And it's not always even right or wrong. It's more everyone's coming from a different place, but like, I think the collective, you might say collective consciousness, the collective input is going to help. You know?
I hope so. Pam?
One of the things, to play off of John's comment, one of the things that the city manager said, and you can see it in the meetings too, when the people come up and they make their public comments, we feel that we're not being heard, but you guys have already asked your questions and made up your mind before that. And I think at one of the meetings, I think it was Commissioner Emmerich that said that he liked the fact that if he had comments, that he would send it to the staff would answer them. Because it almost got to the point where Debbie was the only one asking questions. No one had any questions. I'm like, why is no one asking questions? And then I found out later, and the city manager, I think it mentioned it at one of the meetings, that, when you make your public comments, that's good. But it also, the commissioners already done their work. So maybe going forward, I don't know if it's going to be a pain in the neck, and I don't know where these agenda items go, but get the agendas out there to the commissioners a couple of weeks ahead of time, and then when you get your questions answered, include those questions on the agenda attachments so that the citizens can say, hey, so-and-so asked this question, and that's, so they got their answer, so,
It's like a lot of times, stuff that individual commissioners will bring up are things that we already know the answer to. Debbie did a lot. She knew the answers to a lot of the stuff that she brought up and asked, but she did it because she wanted the citizens to hear it. Yeah. And what I tend to do is during my briefings, if I ask questions about something, I say, okay, just so you know, I'm going to bring this up because I want people to hear that. It gets really easy with literally thousands of decisions that get made at every level of the city, day in and day out. What happens is they don't focus on all that stuff. They have already done that process, like you say. So by the time it gets to the base, by the time it gets up there, it just seems like it's rubber stamped, it's just moving, and we forget. Collectively, we forget sometimes how important it is for those people who are paying attention, who do want to know and get questions answered. And they can't in their 3 minutes ask questions. So you got to hope that we're going to ask those questions, or if they don't get asked, unless you send emails, and then it's a fight. Am I going to get an answer? Am I going to get this? Am I going to get run around? And it's an issue.
That's again why communications, all sorts of things, whether it's, things that staff for the last 2 or 3 years, you saw all these, go around the city, have meetings, put on a little dog and pony show, and then answer a bunch of questions. Like, okay, that helped a little, but that didn't really solve the problem. If anything, it made people's perceptions of staff be much more rigid and structured. And it left commission totally out of that equation because none of us ever said squat at those things. So I do it, and I'm no doubt to some chagrin on the part of staff because they don't know what the heck I'm saying out here, and I'm saying whatever I want to say because I can, because I'm elected by you. So I'm going to give you my opinions. I'm going to share whatever I think. And if it means I have to say, we're sorry, we made a mistake, or this decision or that was wrong, well, I'm going to say it because I don't care, because the truth is the truth. And if we can't get to that point, we're never going to get better at this. We're going to continue to battle, and we got so many challenges for this city going forward. We do. And the more we take time with each other, the more we respect each other's opinions, the more we're willing to hear each other out and explain to each other how we're feeling and how we're thinking, the better. That's why I'm doing this. That's why I will ask you the question, because we could go all night here, and I'll answer your questions till they kick us out. But did this have value? I mean, if I do this every month, you want to do this?
Yeah.
We've got a question here before his arm falls off.
Before your arm falls off.
Okay, we're talking about trust, and one thing, a couple of years ago when this police station first started, just one thing that really bugged me is, and I don't even know exactly what it was. It was price phase 3 or 4 or something, and it was like, oh, let's take the money from that and we'll use that for the police station. And so why should I vote yes for any long-term commitment to anything? Because you don't know where that money's going to go to. That's my first thing. It's just a quirk that I don't like. Second is this $100 fee for empty vacant lots. Because one thing that we saw is all this jump to construction. So we bought some lots around us because it's like, that's the only way we're going to protect ourselves from more stuff, more crap coming in, more houses. Well, I won't say crap. They're all nice houses that go in. But then it's like, oh, well, let's pick this low hanging fruit and charge everybody who has a vacant lot $100. Well, per year. And then, about 2 commission meetings ago, I brought this up, and I think it was the assistant city manager. He came over to me afterwards, said, here, I can help you understand this, gave me his card. I called the next day, left a message on his phone. Did I get a response? No, I didn't get a response. Nobody's going to talk to me about that. But anyway, the point is that if you do this $100 thing, then I'm looking beyond us. It's going to entice people then to sell their property. Property values might go down, I don't know, but what concerns me more is then you've opened the door to more single family construction, whereas you got a lot where people are paying their taxes, and now you're going to charge an extra 100. It's going to.
Well, on that subject, we haven't decided anything. You know that we kicked it.
No, I don't know that.
Well, that's happened in commission meetings.
We'll kill and combine.
No, but
Well, it keeps coming back.
the commission meetings, they don't know that you put that on hold.
Yeah.
What we said is that, and in fact, it's interesting because that particular issue is something that, I was really adamant about. Okay. We should not penalize people who own empty lots, who are taking care of their empty lots, and whose lots don't pose a danger to their neighbors or encroach on their neighbors' properties. We should not be charging those people a fee to compensate for those who don't. I'm not a big believer in that. And I said, there's no way I'll ever support that. So guess what? I wasn't alone. My fellow commissioners, every one of them, felt the same bloody way. And we told staff, go back and figure something else out because this isn't flying. And they did figure out another way. Part of the problem in years past was we used to fine people if their lots weren't maintained.
there's still $250,000 worth of uncollected liens because we can't get paid. Now we found that there actually is a way that if you go through the process of finding people for not maintaining their lots properly, okay, that can end up on their actual tax bill, and they will have to pay it. So the plan is now to develop a program that addresses only those properties that do not take care, all those property owners that do not take care of their lots. They'll be the ones paying the freight. They'll be the ones penalized, not the people who are taking care of their lots. Because how does that make sense? And it's further even a stupid idea, because to charge everyone 100, because if I'm like you, I own, let's say, 10 lots, and I'm doing a good job, and I'm making sure I don't have invasive species crossing my neighbor's property, and I make sure there's no trees hanging over my neighbor's properties, and I'm doing all that stuff. You can bet you know what? I'm spending more than $100 a year. And if the city says, city says, we'll charge you $100 and we'll take care of it, I'll be the first guy to say, here's my $100. Now we'll have 40,000 lots that don't get taken care of. So when staff said, oh, no, people take care of their lots, they would do it anyway because their kids play on them and they have gardens, I call BS on that. And I said it out loud, and staff, of course, had their feelings hurt because Phil was too aggressive and said that was a stupid idea, but it was a stupid idea. If people don't do what they're supposed to do, then they should pay the price, not the people who do take care of it.
Well, that might be define what you consider taking care of.
Well,
You can't, well, hang
there
on.
are rules.
Because you can't even do anything on a lot unless you have a permit.
Right.
Because you
Well,
can't cut anything off.
Well, no, I'm not talking about what you build on. I'm talking about if you've got invasive species that are encroaching on neighbors' properties, if you've got trees that are hanging over.
Yeah, same thing on pushing on it.
Those are the things, and to tell you how bad a problem is, 50 complaints a week. A week,
Yes.
50 is the average of what we get from citizens in the city, all complaining about vacant
And
lots.
you want to hear what contributes to that? Public Works not taking care of the dishes. And all of the cardboard grass.
Yeah, some.
And all those trees.
That's a whole nother, what are you bringing up a subject, we gotta have a whole.
I'm just kidding.
But that's true.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Announcements.
And the police headquarters, that could be a whole meeting unto itself. I can tell you this. I said something way in the beginning when we talked about your police headquarters, and I said, I would never vote to raise your taxes to pay for a police headquarters. People forgot that I said that because we
The
didn't,
library will be closing in 15 minutes.
we didn't vote
Computers will
to raise
automatically
your
shut down.
property taxes to
If you
pay
have
for that police
materials
building.
to shut
We
down,
asked y'all
please
to vote,
proceed to
and you said no.
At this time. Thank you.
Now, we gotta figure out, what should we do? I don't know how to pay for that building. And I gotta tell you something. If you look at, like this gentleman over here said, what's the vision? The vision of the city is to grow it in a way that takes the pressure off of residential property owners. The way to do that is to develop the areas of the city that we can develop commercially and light industrially. If we're going to invest money, if our tax dollars are going to go to do anything in this city, it should go to help that vision, not to pay for a project here or a project there. So I've got a problem. I don't know how to justify the cost of that building and reconcile it with where the dollars maybe should go for better use. How can you say public safety is not important? It is. But so is the infrastructure necessary to handle this growth. That's a challenge. I don't have an answer for you. And none of the commission does, nor staff at this point. We're going to struggle with this problem for months on end, if not years, because we don't want to kick any cans down the road. But I got to tell you, I don't know how we solve this problem and not encumber the city.
How about charging the developers a proper fee? How about when they illegally clear a lot? Like SKS did on those 30 parcels by Little Stokes, right? And they negotiated it down to only 80,000.
You're talking about one of the solutions.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now the current one with the family, Chamberlain family, that's up to almost $600,000.
Folks, thank you for coming here. I will schedule another one for a month from now, here, same place, like same time, but I appreciate it. Tell people, we won't, like one gentleman said, we're not gonna solve all the problems here, but I'm willing to talk and share ideas and be as open and inclusive as I can, so I hope it was worth your time. It was worth mine.
And don't forget, there's an infrastructure meeting